Welcome back to the deep dive. If you mention archaeology, well, one name pretty much immediately leaps to mind. Tutankhamun.
Absolutely. King Tut.
The discovery of his tomb back in 1922, it's still maybe the single greatest moment where, proper scientific discovery just collided with massive global celebrity.
It really is iconic.
But the sources we've looked at for this deep dive, they show something fascinating, this huge breakthrough. It really shouldn't have happened.
No, statistically speaking, probably not. It's an amazing story. It's defined by, 5 years of pretty much failure?
Right. And the sheer stubbornness of this one guy, this outsider.
Howard Carter, yeah. And this really improbable partnership that just flew in the face of what everyone else believed.
Exactly. Universal skepticism.
It's an extraordinary deep dive, honestly, because when you really dig into the material, you see the discovery wasn't like the result of some clear scientific path forward. No, it was much more like a high-stakes gamble, almost desperate, really, pushing against decades of everyone in the field saying, stop looking there.
So today we're unpacking that context, the feeling that everything was already found.
The exhaustion, yeah, and analyzing the very human story behind it all, the personalities involved.
And then tracing how the actual science, the facts, got almost immediately buried under this huge modern myth.
The Curse of the Pharaohs, which is maybe the most famous bit for most people, even now.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's get into it. Section 1, the consensus of exhaustion.
Right.
For us now, like you said, a century later, the Valley of the Kings just means treasure, doesn't it? Gold, pharaohs, the works.
Mm-hmm. That's the image.
But if you actually put yourself back in the early 1920s, the expert view, the consensus, was totally the opposite. The valley was, finished. Done.
Absolutely. Utterly, completely finished. That's the key. It had been the absolute epicenter of Egyptology since, Napoleon's time.
Over 100 years.
Yeah, a century plus of really intense digging. So by the time World War I ended, the scholars, the institutions, they basically saw it as a, quote, closed book.
Systematically picked clean.
Picked clean, exactly. The feeling wasn't just, maybe there's not much left. It was stronger. It had hardened into actual doctrine.
So continuing to dig there wasn't just seen as optimistic?
No, it was seen as foolish. Worse than foolish, actually. It was stubborn folly, a waste of time, a waste of money, resources that, frankly, could be better used digging somewhere else where finds were still likely.
And this wasn't just like random people saying this. This was the official line, wasn't it? From the guy who arguably knew the valley best at the time.
Theodore M. Davis.
Yep.
He was the authority, a wealthy American lawyer. Very successful.
Not an academic originally.
No, a lawyer. But he got serious about Egyptology. And crucially, he held the official government concession to dig in the valley for about a decade. His money funded the work.
And he'd found stuff, important stuff.
Oh yeah, some major finds. Tombs of officials, nobles. And really importantly for this story, he found 2 different stashes of artifacts that actually had Tutankhamun's name on them.
Okay, wait. If he found things with Tutankhamun's name, wouldn't that suggest the tomb was, nearby?
Logically, yes. You'd think so now.
So why did he conclude the opposite, that the tomb was destroyed, lost? Was it just bad archaeology?
That's a really good question. It comes down to how evidence was interpreted back then. So he found these items in places we now call KV54 and KV58.
Okay.
KV54, for instance, had things like broken pottery, bits of linen, leftover materials from embalming, stuff like that.
Right.
Davis correctly figured this was the leftover stuff from the king's funeral banquet, maybe from the process of sealing the tomb originally.
Okay. So that makes sense.
But because he found this secondary stuff scattered around, not in a tomb, he assumed the main thing, the tomb itself, must have been robbed out completely in ancient times.
So the robbers took the good stuff, scattered the leftovers, and the tomb itself was maybe destroyed or just lost to time.
Exactly. He saw the evidence of the king, but interpreted it as evidence of absence, if that makes sense. The story was over.
So he didn't miss the clues, he just read them differently.
Precisely. And he really cemented this belief in his big 1912 publication. It was called The Tombs of Hammurabi and Tutankhamun.
Catchy title.
Yeah. And in it, he basically delivers what everyone thought was the final word on the valley. He wrote, and this is the famous quote, "I fear that the Valley of Kings is now exhausted."
Wow. That's pretty definitive.
Totally. And coming from him, the guy who'd spent years and a fortune digging there, it carried huge weight. That became the accepted wisdom for the next 10 years. This field just moved on.
Okay, but here's where the story gets almost painful, the historical irony. Sources are clear on this. During Davis's very last season digging, he abandoned one final spot. Apparently, he was worried digging deeper might damage a nearby tourist path or something.
Yeah, destabilize the ground. That was the rationale given.
And at the exact point where his workers stopped digging, they were just 2 meters away.
Wow. 2 meters. About 6 feet.
2 meters from the top step of Tutankhamun's actual tomb entrance.
It's just agonizing to think about, isn't it? All that effort, the big publication declaring it finished, the global consensus, and he was right there.
6 feet away.
6 feet. He packed up, gave back the concession, and left Egypt basically thinking, yep, I proved it. The valley's empty.
Leaving the door open, quite literally, for the one person who refused to believe it.
Which brings us right to them. Section 2, the unlikely alliance. Carter and Carnarvon.
This partnership, it really was, as you said, born out of failure. 2 totally separate failures, personal and professional. Let's start with Carter. Howard Carter, the obstinate archaeologist.
Carter was, definitely an outsider,
Yeah.
a total anomaly in that world, which was very elite, very Oxbridge.
Born 1874, youngest of 11 kids, not much formal schooling.
Right. He didn't come up through the usual academic route at all. His way into Egyptology back in 1891 was basically through the tradesman's entrance. He was hired as a tracer.
And a tracer, so drawing things.
Exactly. A draftsman. His job was to meticulously copy the paintings and hieroglyphs on tomb walls. That was his skill.
So not the guy with the theories, initially. The guy with the pencil.
That's it. But crucially, he had this incredible talent, and he was ferociously ambitious. He learned excavation techniques on the ground, working under some of the real pioneers, like Sir William Flinders Petrie, who was known for being incredibly rigorous.
Okay, so he learned the practical side.
He did. He developed this combination, an artist's eye for detail from his tracing work, plus this really strict scientific approach to recording everything. That became his signature.
And he was actually doing really well for a while, wasn't he? He got appointed Chief Inspector of Antiquities for Upper Egypt. Pretty young, too.
Astonishingly young, yeah, only 25. His career looked set, but then came 1905, and this incident called the Saqqara Affair.
Ah, yes, the Saqqara Affair. This is key to understanding Carter, isn't it?
It absolutely defines him.
Oh, right.
Brilliant, yes, but also totally uncompromising. Stubborn even, and fiercely loyal to his team.
This was what happened. There was some kind of fight.
Basically, yeah. A group of European tourists, sort of specifically say drunken, belligerent French tourists, got into some kind of altercation with Carter's Egyptian site guards.
Okay.
The tourists demanded that Carter make his staff apologize. This was colonial Egypt, remember. The power dynamics were clear.
So the expectation was Carter would side with the Europeans.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But Carter, he refused. Flatly refused. He investigated, believed his staff, and backed them 100% against the French authorities.
Wow. That took guts.
It did. He saw it as a matter of principle, protecting his men, upholding local dignity. When the higher-ups, the French officials in the Antiquities Service, demanded he apologize and discipline his staff, Carter just resigned.
Resigned on principle.
On principle. He wouldn't budge, wouldn't betray his team or compromise what he thought was right.
That's incredible integrity, but in that system, that must have been career suicide.
Totally. It cut him off completely from the official archaeological world in Egypt. He became, as one source puts it, brilliant but unemployable.
So what did he do? How did he survive?
For several years, it was pretty tough. He lived in Luxor, basically scraping by selling his watercolor paintings, which were beautiful, very detailed to tourists.
So his professional failure, his stubbornness, actually made him available. It left him needing something else.
Exactly. It left him desperate for a private backer, someone outside the official channels, someone with money who maybe didn't care about the bureaucratic niceties.
Enter failure number 2, the man with the money. George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon.
Lord Carnarvon, yes. Very different background. Archetypal Edwardian aristocrat. Born into enormous wealth and privilege, owner of Highclere Castle.
Which people now know as Downton Abbey.
The very same. But his early passion wasn't digging in the sand, it was speed.
Motor racing. He was apparently quite the speed demon.
Oh yeah. A notoriously reckless driver is how the sources describe him. Loved risk, loved cars. And that passion led directly to his own life-changing disaster in 1903.
The car crash in Germany.
A really horrific accident. It left him with severe injuries, chronic pain for the rest of his life, and, crucially for this story, really serious permanent lung damage, respiratory weakness.
So his failure wasn't professional, it was physical. A result of his adventurous spirit.
Exactly. And that physical vulnerability became the catalyst because his doctors told him, absolutely, you cannot spend the cold, damp English winters here. You must go somewhere warm and dry.
Like Egypt.
Like Egypt. So he starts spending winters in Egypt for his health. And to pass the time, he gets into collecting antiquities. Bit of amateur digging.
A rich man's hobby.
Pretty much. But he was smart enough to realize he didn't really know what he was doing. His enthusiasm was bigger than his expertise. He needed a professional to make his hobby credible, to actually run a proper excavation.
And Carter needed a job. That's
Yeah.
almost too perfect.
It's this incredible symbiosis of failure, isn't it? Carter, exiled because he's stuck to his principles, desperately needs funding and a way back in. Carnarvon, forced to be in Egypt because of his health, has the money but needs the expertise and, frankly, the credibility.
If Carter had just said sorry back in 1905,
He'd have stayed a government official, probably risen high, never needed Carnarvon.
and if Carnarvon hadn't crashed his car,
He'd likely have stayed in England racing cars, hunting foxes, whatever earls did. Probably never would have gotten serious about Egyptology.
it took these two completely unrelated personal disasters to bring them together. Gaston Maspero, the head of the Antiquities Service, actually introduced them in 1907.
Yes, Maspero brokered the deal. Carter got his lifeline, the financial backing he craved. Carmon got his expert, the scientific legitimacy he wanted.
And Carter apparently had one specific goal in mind from early on.
Tutankhamun. He became obsessed with finding this relatively minor, obscure boy king. So when Theodore Davis finally gave up that Valley of the Kings concession in 1914,
Carnarvon snapped it up.
he did, giving Carter the chance to pursue this obsession right in the place everyone else insisted was completely empty.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, 5 Years of Dust and the Final Wager. They get the concession in 1914, but then World War I breaks out.
Right, so that delays things. Carter actually served as a diplomatic courier during the war. Serious work in the Valley didn't really kick off until late 1917.
And Carter's plan wasn't just random digging, was it? It was systematic, almost brutal.
Oh, absolutely. He had this meticulous grid block system. His aim was to literally strip the entire chosen area of the valley floor, layer by layer, all the way down to the original bedrock.
Why? To prove nothing was missed.
Essentially, yes, to methodically eliminate every square inch, leaving no doubt. If the tomb was there, this system would find it. If it wasn't, well, then Davis really had been right.
The scale of this, though, the sources talk about the sheer amount of material they move.
It's staggering. The estimates are around 70,000 tons of sand, rock, rubble, debris from centuries of flash floods and other tomb workings.
70,000 tons. Just try to picture that.
It's almost impossible. Imagine the physical labor, day after day, season after season, from 1917 to 1922, and the psychological toll on Carter overseeing this massive, dusty operation.
Moving mountains of dirt. And for 5 long seasons.
Yeah.
What did they find for all that effort?
Almost nothing, seriously. Bits and pieces, minor objects, nothing of real significance. It was 5 years of grinding, repetitive, fruitless searching.
Every shovel full must have just seemed to confirm Davis's verdict. The valley was exhausted.
You can imagine the pressure mounting. Carnarvon wasn't infinitely wealthy. This dig was costing a fortune, and his patience, understandably, was wearing very thin.
Which makes the fact the tomb survived at all even more incredible. How did it stay hidden through all that previous digging by Davis and others? Its location was unusual, right?
Very unusual. It wasn't cut high up into the cliff face like most of the famous pharaohs' tombs. It was dug down into the actual floor of the valley.
Okay, but why wasn't it found earlier?
2 key things protected it, almost accidentally. First, its entrance got buried under huge amounts of debris, thousands of tons of limestone chippings that were dug out later during the construction of the tomb of Ramesses VI, which is located almost directly above it.
So later construction debris just completely covered it up?
Completely hit the entrance, yeah.
Right.
And then the second layer of protection, which is almost ironic.
Oh, what's that?
Centuries later, necropolis workmen, the guys who built and maintained the other tombs, built some simple stone huts for themselves to live and work in, directly on top of that debris pile covering Tutankhamun's entrance.
So the entrance was hidden because it just looked like an ordinary patch of ground where some workers had camped out?
Exactly. It looked like the least promising spot in the whole area. Disturbed ground, recent structures. Nobody bothered looking underneath those huts until Carter.
Because his grid system, having cleared everywhere else, eventually pointed right at that spot.
Precisely. By eliminating all other possibilities, He deduced that this one small triangular patch of ground right underneath where those workmen's huts had stood was logically the only place left where a hidden tomb could be.
Logic doesn't pay the bills, though. By the summer of 1922, Carnarvon had had enough.
He was dissatisfied by the lack of results, as the sources politely put it, fed up. He summoned Carter back to England to Highclere Castle.
The Down Abbey meeting.
The showdown, yeah. Carnarvon told Carter, "That's it, I'm pulling the funding. The search is over."
Wow. After all that time, this must have been Carter's absolute lowest point.
It had to be. He turns up, knowing this is probably the end of his career, the end of his obsession, but he comes prepared. He unrolls his detailed maps of the valley.
Showing all the areas he'd cleared.
Yes, and he points to that one last, tiny, triangular section, the bit under the huts. And he apparently made this incredibly passionate plea. He argued, it has to be there, because we've proven it's nowhere else.
The conviction must have been immense.
It seems so. The sources say it was the sheer force of Carter's unshakable conviction that gave Carnarvon pause. But then Carter did something extraordinary.
What?
He made the final gamble. He told Carnarvon, "If you won't pay for one more season, I will. I'll fund it myself."
Out of his own pocket. He must have been broke.
Pretty much. Selling watercolors doesn't make you rich. But offering to use his own meager savings, everything he had left, on this one last dig.
That must have impressed Carnarvon. The sheer belief.
It did. Carnarvon, remember, admired risk-takers. Faced with that level of, well, almost fanaticism, he changed his mind. He agreed. Okay, one more season.
But this was it, the absolute final chance.
Absolutely, the 1922-23 season. If they didn't find it then, under those huts, it was over for good. The pressure must have been immense.
Unbelievable pressure, which takes us right into Section 4, wonderful things, the discovery itself, and that little secret afterwards.
So work starts earlier than usual that autumn, November 1st, 1922. And they focus laser-like on that one remaining triangular plot.
Clearing away the foundations of those ancient huts.
Exactly. And just 4 days later, November 4th, bang, everything changes.
How did it happen? Who actually found the first sign?
Well, the official reports tend to be a bit dry, to say a workman located a step. But there's a much more charming, persistent local story from the village of 𝐾𝐄𝐄.
Ah, what's the story?
It credits a young boy, a 12-year-old water carrier named Hussein Abdel Rasool.
A water boy found Tutankhamun's tomb.
The story goes that part of his job was carrying water jars, which often had rounded bottoms. So to keep them steady, he'd scrape a little depression in the sand or rubble.
Okay.
And on that morning, November 4th, his scraping tool supposedly hit something hard, flat, and clearly man-made, the top of a stone step.
Wow, whether it was him or another worker, Carter gets called over.
Yes, Carter apparently arrived on site to find this unusual silence among the digging team. He knew instantly something major had occurred.
And they start clearing away the debris.
And revealed this sunken staircase. One step, then another, then another. 16 steps cut down into the bedrock.
Leading down to a doorway.
A sealed doorway. And this was the electrifying part. The plaster sealing the doorway was stamped over and over with the official seals of the royal necropolis.
The jackal god Anubis over 9 bound captives. The symbol of royal protection.
Exactly. This wasn't just any tomb. This was royal. And crucially, those seals looked intact, undisturbed for millennia.
Carter must have been ecstatic, but also terrified someone would find out too soon.
Absolutely. His immediate reaction was caution. He ordered the entire staircase filled back in with sand and rubble immediately.
Reburied it. Why?
Security and secrecy. This was too big. He needed his patron, Lord Carnarvon, to be there for the actual opening. He couldn't risk looters or even just the news leaking out prematurely.
Right, so he covers it up, posts guards, and sends that famous telegram.
The legendary telegram to Carnarvon back in England, famously concise to save money on the cable charges.
At last have made wonderful discovery in Valley Stop. A magnificent tomb with seals intact, stop recovered. Same for your arrival, stop congratulations.
It's almost funny how understated it is. Totally. Wonderful discovery. Understatement of the century. And then Carter had to wait.
How long?
Nearly 3 weeks. Carnarvon and his daughter, Lady Evelyn Herbert, had to travel all the way from Highclere. For Carter, those 3 weeks must have been pure agony. Unbearable suspense, one account calls it. Just pacing the valley floor, guarding this colossal secret.
Knowing his entire life, the entire field of Egyptology was about to change.
Finally, November 26, 1922, Carnarvon and Lady Evelyn arrive. Officials are notified. The day has come.
They re-clear the staircase, Everyone's watching. They break through the plaster of that first sealed doorway.
And find themselves looking into a descending corridor, but it's not empty. It's packed solid, floor to ceiling, with limestone chips and rubble.
Packed. Was that a bad sign, like it had been filled in after being robbed?
Actually, no. It was seen as a good sign. It suggested that if ancient robbers had got in through the first door, maybe they were disturbed, and the necropolis priests or guards had deliberately filled the passage back up to protect whatever lay beyond. It implied an official resealing.
Ah, okay. So they start the painstaking job of clearing this rubble-filled corridor.
Very carefully. Until they reach another sealed doorway at the end of the passage, door number 2.
This is the big one. Carter steps forward. He makes, as the story goes, a tiny breach in the top left corner, just a small hole.
Right. He needs to test the air first, holds up a candle.
To check for poisonous gases, right, after 3,000 years sealed up.
Exactly. And the hot, stale air from inside the tomb rushes out, making the candle flame flicker violently. But no foul gases. It's safe.
So he widens the hole slightly, holds up the candle again, or maybe an electric torch by this point, and peers inside.
Into utter darkness at first. His eyes need to adjust from the bright Egyptian sunlight.
What does he see?
He later describes seeing strange shapes slowly emerging from the gloom. Strange animals, statues, and gold, everywhere the glint of gold. He was apparently just struck dumb, speechless.
Just staring into this impossible treasure trove.
For what must have felt like an eternity to the people waiting behind him. Carnarvon, getting impatient, finally asks that legendary question.
Can you see anything?
And Carter, still overwhelmed, manages to reply with perhaps the most famous understatement in archaeological history.
Yes, wonderful things.
Wonderful things. It just perfectly captures the awe, the magnitude, but also that very British, reserved way of expressing profound emotion.
They eventually make the opening bigger, shine in proper lights. What did that first room, the antechamber, actually look like?
Chaos. Carter called it the property room of a vanished civilization. It wasn't neat. Things were stacked haphazardly, maybe rushed during the funeral. But what things?
Like what? Give us some highlights.
Okay, well, 3 enormous gilded funerary couches, huge things, carved into the shapes of sacred animals, a lion, a celestial cow goddess, and this strange composite hippo-crocodile beast.
Oh, wow.
Dismantled golden chariots, gleaming even after 3,000 years, intricate alabaster vases, boxes and chests everywhere. And maybe the most stunning single object in that room, the golden throne.
The throne, with the picture of Tutankhamun and his wife.
That's the one. A beautiful, intimate scene of the young king and queen Ankhesenamun. Just an astonishing piece of craftsmanship and art. Over 5,000 artifacts eventually cataloged from the tomb, and a huge number were crammed into this one room.
But Carter, the archaeologist, his eyes would have immediately gone past the treasures, wouldn't they? Looking for the main event.
Absolutely. His attention fixed on the north wall of the antechamber. And there, standing like sentinels, were 2 life-size statues of the king.
Made of wood, covered in black resin.
Yes, with gold kilts and sandals, holding maces and staffs. Facing each other, guarding yet another sealed doorway between them. Door number 3.
Leading, presumably, to the burial chamber itself.
That was the assumption. And crucially, they looked closely at this 3rd sealed doorway. And they could see clear signs. A small patch, low down, where the plaster looked different, rougher.
A patched-up hole.
Exactly. It looked like ancient robbers had managed to break through into the burial chamber, but then the hole had been replastered and resealed in antiquity.
Okay, so the protocol here is clear, right? You stop. You wait for the chief inspector from the Antiquity Service. You document everything officially before going any further.
That was absolutely the rule.
Yeah.
Especially for a find of this magnitude. You do not breach the final seal without official witnesses and permissions.
But they didn't follow the rule, did they?
Nope, not at all. Later that same night, long after the officials had gone home, after the workmen had left, when the valley was dark and silent, Carter, Carnarvon, Lady Evelyn, and Carter's trusted assistant Arthur Callender, they went back.
Secretly.
Completely secretly.
Yeah.
Driven by, as one source puts it, human curiosity so powerful it could not be constrained by rules.
Oh, they were.
Back to that 3rd doorway.
And they didn't break the main seal?
No. They carefully chipped away at that ancient replastered robber's hole, making it just big enough to squeeze through.
So Carter, Carnarvon, and Lady Evelyn crawled through that small hole.
Becoming the very first people in over 3,300 years to enter Tutankhamun's actual burial chamber. An illicit, secret, totally unofficial entry.
What did they see inside? Was the king there? Had the robbers reached him?
They shone their lights around. And what they saw filled almost the entire room, a massive, gleaming structure of gilded wood, the outermost of 4 nested shrines, like giant golden boxes, one inside the other.
And the seals on that shrine.
Intact. The clay seals on the doors of the great shrine had never been broken. Whatever those ancient robbers had done, they hadn't got inside the shrine. The king, presumably within the sarcophagus, within the coffins, inside all those shrines, was safe, undisturbed.
An unbelievable moment of confirmation, but they'd broken every rule to experience it.
Absolutely. They'd committed an act that, if discovered, could have cost them the concession, caused a massive scandal. They quickly withdrew, replastered the hole as best they could, and swore each other to absolute secrecy about their midnight adventure.
It's fascinating, the tension between the scientists needing to follow protocol and the treasure hunter, the adventurer, just needing to know.
It really highlights that duality. The most famous, most meticulously documented archaeological find in history began with a secret act of trespass.
Which brings us, with a bit of a jolt, to Section 5, the curse of the pharaohs. Because just as the careful scientific work was beginning, tragedy struck. And the real story got completely swamped by myth.
Yeah, it's a sharp turn. 5 months after that incredible discovery, April 1923, Lord Carnarvon dies in Cairo. He was only 56.
And the timing just seemed too perfect, didn't it? Open the tomb, disturb the pharaoh, pay the price.
Exactly, but the medical reality was, well, sadly mundane, though tragic for him. He got bitten on the cheek by a mosquito while in Luxor.
Okay, happens all the time in Egypt.
Right, but a few days later, back in Cairo, he was shaving, and he accidentally nicked the mosquito bite with his razor.
Oh dear, infection.
Infection set in. This was before antibiotics, remember. The infection spread, turned into erysipelas, then sepsis, blood poisoning.
And given his health history, that lung weakness from the car crash years before.
His body just couldn't fight it. The sepsis overwhelmed him, developed into pneumonia, and he died. Medically, it's a clear sequence of events. Unlucky, yes, but rational.
But the world didn't see it that way.
Not at all. The public, already whipped into a frenzy by the discovery, saw a direct supernatural cause and effect. The pharaoh's revenge.
And the conditions were just perfect for this myth to explode, weren't they? First, the media situation.
Oh, definitely. Carnarvon had signed this exclusive deal for news and photos with the Times of London.
Smart business, maybe, but it annoyed other newspapers.
Annoyed them. It infuriated them. All the rival journalists from papers around the world were effectively frozen out of the biggest story on the planet. They couldn't get the official scoops, the photos from inside the tomb.
So when Carnarvon died,
that was the story they could cover. It was sensational, it involved a key player, and crucially, it wasn't exclusive to the Times. They jumped on it, and if the facts were a bit thin, well, speculation about a curse sold newspapers. Lots of newspapers.
Earl dies mysteriously after opening tomb is a much better headline than man succumbs to infected mosquito bite.
Infinitely better.
Yeah.
And then you add in the general mood of the time, the 1920s.
Post-World War I.
Exactly. Millions of people across Europe and America were grieving the war, the Spanish flu pandemic. There was this huge surge in interest in spiritualism, seances, contacting the dead. People were psychologically ready, almost eager to believe in supernatural forces, ancient powers, curses.
So the public was receptive, and then famous people started chiming in.
That really gave it legs. The novelist Marie Corelli, who was hugely popular then, wrote articles speculating about dire punishment for disturbing the tomb.
Okay, a novelist maybe, but then someone more unexpected.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, the ultimate rational detective.
What did he say?
Doyle, who was actually a passionate believer in spiritualism in his later life, publicly suggested that Carnarvon's death might not have been just illness. He speculated about evil elementals or gnomes. Yeah, gnomes created by ancient Egyptian priests specifically to guard the tomb.
Gnomes? Seriously? Conan Doyle said that?
He did. And coming from him, it lent this veneer of, well, maybe not scientific, but intellectual weight to the curse idea. It helped it spread like wildfire.
And the journalists just ran with it, adding more and more lurid details?
Oh, they totally fabricated stuff. Wild stories started appearing that all the lights in Cairo flickered and died at the exact moment Carnarvon passed away.
Which was probably just a normal power outage in 1920s Cairo.
Almost certainly. Then there was the story that Carnarvon's beloved dog, a terrier named Susie, who was back home in England at Highclere Castle, supposedly let out a howl and dropped dead at the very same moment her master died in Egypt.
Did that actually happen?
Highly unlikely. Probably just a dramatic invention.
Hmm.
And the most famous one of all, involving Carter himself.
The canary.
The canary. The story went that Carter had this pet canary in a cage at his house near the valley, and supposedly one day, a cobra, the symbol of pharaonic power, worn on the king's crown, slithered into the house and ate the canary, a direct warning to Carter. Almost certainly not. Carter did have a canary, but the cobra story is widely seen as pure journalistic invention, but it was incredibly potent symbolism.
But the absolute cornerstone of the curse myth, the thing everyone knows, is the inscription, right? The warning carved on the tomb wall.
Yes, the supposed inscription. Death comes on swift wings to he who disturbs the tomb of the pharaoh, or variations on that theme.
So that was found inside?
No. Absolutely, unequivocally no. Howard Carter, his team, all the official records, they stated repeatedly and emphatically, no such inscription, nothing remotely like it was ever found anywhere in the tomb. It was completely made up by the press.
Wow. So the most famous piece of evidence for the curse is pure fiction.
Total fiction. But it stuck. It was just too good a line to check. Carter himself dismissed the whole curse frenzy as Tommy rot and nonsense.
Okay, so if it wasn't a supernatural curse, were there any plausible scientific explanations for why some people connected with the tomb did seem to get sick or die relatively young? Starting with Carnarvon himself.
Well, beyond the clear sepsis explanation for Carnarvon, people did start looking for other rational environmental factors within the tomb itself. One theory involved pathogens.
Like bacteria or viruses.
More likely dormant spores of molds or fungi like aspergillus. The idea was these could lie dormant for millennia in a sealed, dark, undisturbed environment. Then, when the tomb was open, inhaling these spores could potentially cause severe respiratory infections, especially in someone with weakened lungs like Carnarvon.
Is that plausible?
It's plausible, yes. Certain molds can survive a long time and cause illness, but proving it definitively after the fact is hard.
What about other theories? Carter himself lived for many years, but eventually died of cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma. Any connection there?
That led to speculation about radiation, specifically radon gas. Radon is a naturally occurring radioactive gas produced by the decay of uranium in rocks, like the limestone the tomb was cut into.
So it could have built up inside the sealed tomb over 3,000 years.
Theoretically, yes. High concentrations could have accumulated. Then, the people working inside for long periods, like Carter, might have inhaled enough to potentially increase their long-term risk of certain cancers.
Again, plausible?
Plausible, but also very difficult to prove. And we have to be careful not to just swap a supernatural curse for a convenient scientific curse. The real test is looking at everyone involved.
Right. What does the actual data say? Did people connected to the tomb die younger, on average, than expected?
This is where the science gets really interesting and definitively debunks the myth. The key study was published in the British Medical Journal in 2002. It was a proper epidemiological study, a retrospective cohort analysis.
Okay, what does that mean in simple terms?
They identified a group of people, 44 Westerners, who were known to have been present in Egypt around the time the tomb was opened and entered in the early stages. They divided these into groups based on their likely level of exposure.
So people who went inside versus people who were just nearby.
Exactly. Then they tracked the lifespans of these individuals, particularly the 25 people deemed to have had significant exposure to the tomb environment. And they compared their survival rates and ages at death to control groups of similar people from that era who weren't exposed.
And the result, did the exposed group die significantly earlier?
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. The study found no statistically significant difference in lifespan or mortality rates between those exposed to the tomb and the controls.
No difference at all.
None that couldn't be explained by chance. The average age at death for the 25 people considered exposed was 70 years old.
Which sounds perfectly normal for that time.
Exactly. And their average survival time after the tomb was opened was nearly 21 years. Again, totally normal. The conclusion was crystal clear. The curse of Tutankhamun had no basis in reality when you looked at the actual survival statistics.
So when you look at the other famous victims often cited,
you find mundane explanations. George J. Gould, an American financier who visited the tomb and died soon after. He died of pneumonia, not some mysterious Pharaoh's fever.
Aubrey Herbert, Carnarvon's half-brother,
died of sepsis, just like Carnarvon. But his was related to complications from major dental surgery. Again, a known risk at the time.
Richard Bethel, Carter's secretary,
died years later in 1929 in a fire at his gentleman's club in London. Tragic, but nothing to do with Egypt. Another supposed victim was smothered in his sleep, but that was likely misreported or unrelated.
And the main man himself, Howard Carter, the person most exposed, spending a decade inside that tomb, handling everything.
He lived for another 17 years after the discovery. He died in 1939, age 64, from Hodgkin's lymphoma. A serious illness, yes, but a known form of cancer, not some ancient curse. And Lady Evelyn, who went into the burial chamber on that secret first night, she lived until 1980, dying at the ripe old age of 79.
So the data just doesn't support the curse at all. It was a media sensation built on coincidence and fabrication.
Precisely. A fantastic story that captured the public imagination, but ultimately just a story. Random clusters of deaths happen, and confirmation bias makes us see patterns where none exist.
Which finally brings us to Section 6, the enduring legacy of Tutankhamun. Because while the curse grabbed the headlines, the real impact of finding that tomb was enormous, and it changed everything.
Oh, massively. Scientifically, culturally, politically. It was a watershed moment.
Let's start with the science. Carter's approach set a new standard, didn't it?
It absolutely revolutionized field archaeology. Carter realized instantly this wasn't just another tomb find. This was unique and almost intact royal burial. It couldn't be treated like a treasure hunt.
So no rushing in to grab the gold.
Quite the opposite. He famously took 10 years to fully clear and document the tomb.
10 years? Why so long? People must have been impatient.
Immensely impatient. But Carter insisted on unprecedented rigor. Every single object, all 5,398 of them, had to be meticulously recorded before it was moved.
Ow.
Notes, drawings, scale plans, and crucially, photographs. Harry Burton's amazing black and white photos documented every stage, showing objects exactly as they were found, in situ.
In their original position.
Yes. And then conservation started immediately, right there at the tomb. Many objects were incredibly fragile, wood decaying, textiles crumbling, ancient glues failing when exposed to air after 3,000 years. They had to stabilize things on the spot.
So it wasn't just about finding treasure, it was about preserving knowledge.
Exactly. That slow, painstaking, multidisciplinary approach, excavation, recording, photography, conservation, all working together, became the absolute benchmark for modern scientific archaeology. It marked the end of the old ways, the often destructive digging for goodies approach of the 19th century.
And the timing of the discovery, politically speaking, was just explosive.
Incredibly sensitive. The tomb was found in November 1922. Egypt had gained nominal independence from Britain just months earlier, in February 1922.
So national pride was running high.
Very high. And suddenly the greatest archaeological treasure ever found, this potent symbol of ancient Egyptian glory, is discovered by a British team, funded by a British earl, who then signs an exclusive media deal with the British newspaper.
You can see how that would cause friction with the newly assertive Egyptian government.
Huge friction. Disputes erupted almost immediately over ownership, access, and control of the artifacts. The Times deal in particular just poured fuel on the fire, making it seem like foreigners were controlling Egypt's heritage.
And this led to a major change in how archaeology was done in Egypt.
It led directly to the end of the partage system.
Partage, what was that?
It was a long-standing colonial-era practice where foreign excavation teams were allowed to take a share, often up to 50% of the artifacts they found out of Egypt, back to museums in their home countries.
So Egypt's heritage was being divided up and shipped overseas.
Yes. But the Tutankhamun discovery, with all the nationalist feeling and international scrutiny it generated, gave the Egyptian government the leverage to say no more. They fought successfully to abolish partage.
Meaning the treasures stayed in Egypt.
All of them. Tutankhamun's treasures became the symbol of Egypt, reclaiming control over its own cultural patrimony. It was a massive turning point, ensuring that Egypt's heritage from then on would remain in Egypt.
And beyond the science and politics, there was the cultural impact. Tutmania.
Oh, global Tutmania. The discovery just unleashed this worldwide fascination and went far beyond academic circles.
How did it show up in culture?
Most visibly in design. The aesthetics found in the tomb, the clean lines, the geometric patterns, the stylized animal motifs, the use of lotus flowers and scarabs became a huge influence on the Art Deco style that was just emerging in the 1920s.
So Tutankhamun influenced fashion, jewelry.
Fashion, jewelry, furniture, architecture, graphic design, even things like cigarette cases and radiator caps. Egyptian motifs were suddenly everywhere. It made Egyptology cool, popular, accessible to everyone.
And it basically invented the idea of the museum blockbuster exhibition, didn't it?
Absolutely. The later world tours of the Tutankhamun treasures, starting in the 1960s and 70s, drew unprecedented crowds, millions of people. It showed museums the incredible public appetite for seeing these unique historical artifacts up close. It created the model for the big, must-see international exhibitions we still have today.
So scientifically, politically, culturally, A truly transformative discovery, not a curse, but a catalyst.
A catalyst for so much, and providing this unique, almost perfectly preserved snapshot of the wealth and artistry of Egypt's new kingdom, an unparalleled window into the past.
Okay, let's try and wrap this incredible story up. We started with Howard Carter, this determined, maybe obsessive outsider, refusing to believe the experts who said the valley was empty.
Spending 5 years shifting 70,000 tons of dust based on little more than conviction.
And we end knowing that the incredibly careful, decade-long scientific process he initiated actually began with him breaking the rules.
That secret, illicit visit into the burial chamber with Carnarvon and Lady Evelyn. The scientist versus the adventurer.
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it? Carter and Carnarvon, this unlikely pair, faced a choice. Follow the strict rules of science or give in to that overwhelming human need to know right now.
And they chose curiosity. They broke protocol. Makes you wonder. The most famous archaeological discovery ever made needed that act of illicit adventure to truly begin. It suggests that sometimes, maybe the biggest breakthroughs don't come just from following the methodical process.
Sometimes they depend on conviction, on being willing to bend or even break the rules because you believe so strongly.
Perhaps. That absolute, unshakable conviction Carter had. It drove him through years of failure, and it drove him into that chamber that night.
So a final thought for you, our listeners, to mull over. What rules do you follow in your own pursuits, whether it's work, study, or passion projects? And when, if ever, does that deep internal conviction tell you it's time for a leap of faith, maybe even time to bend the rules a little?
Something to think about.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
And so, another chapter closes. For more journeys into history's forgotten files, please like and subscribe. Your next story awaits.